So there are health benefits and well-being benefits to play for everybody. It's good for human development. It's not just good for overworked moms or startup starters who just want to escape sometimes, but it's especially good for children. This is how children engage with their world, how they learn to understand boundaries, rules of physics, laws of physics, how they begin to develop emotionally, accept failure, stretch beyond what they think they can do. And Maria Montessori, a famous school starter, said the play is the work of the child, and this is truly what it is. But what happens when something happens to a child that disrupts that normal active being? Disease or injury, essentially hospitalization. What happens when that normal play can't take place? When normal play can't take place, this not only negatively affects development of the child, but also the health and well-being. My name is Christina, and I started a company just about a year and a half ago that does augmented reality therapy. And right now we focus on children in hospital. We do three main things. We use augmented reality for distraction therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. And so I'm here today to share some of the lessons I've learned about the values of augmented reality in this setting, based on my experience with my company, SpellBound. So it's no doubt that kids need help with hospitalization. Very frequently, they don't have the capability to understand or emotionally cope with what's going on. Hospitalization is overwhelming as an adult, let alone a child going into a situation where they have no control, things are being done to them, they don't have a say, or walking into a place with overwhelming equipment that you don't understand. Through the eyes of the child, this could be a play world, buttons and lights and all kinds of sounds, except you're not allowed to touch anything. You're not allowed to engage with that world. You must accept what's being done to you. This is really hard. And so when kids this isn't a place for imaginative play, this isn't a place for exploration. So when you're going against the nature of the child, this means that it leaves a lot of room for fear and anxiety. So we have a couple pictures here of patients, and they are using SpellBound here, but on the left is a 2.5-year-old child who had to undergo a sleep study. Nothing too traumatic, it's not painful. They need to be wired up with 27 leads glued to their head and body, have a cannula put up their nose, wrapped like a mummy, and then they're told, go to sleep, we're gonna collect data on you. And you can imagine a toddler really just doesn't wanna do this. So the idea of giving them a way to self-distract, so something that's a little bit beyond just go watch your normal YouTube videos or play your normal games, giving something that's completely novel, even for young children. So in this case, Ivy was using a book, which is a comfort item for a child, to engage in augmented reality. So they did the procedure, the prep in half the time and with 0 tears. The right larger picture is one in the ER with a young patient being held in her mom's arms. This is what's called comfort positioning in the healthcare world. The woman in the foreground is the therapist, and the nurse in the background is about to do horrible things to that child. She's about to maybe poke her, prod her, or just do something that the child's not going to understand. And as you can imagine, when a child doesn't like those things and cooperate, it makes treatment very difficult. It can affect outcomes. So in this case, using augmented reality to just help them refocus attention on something positive, wonderful, exciting, new, while that nurse goes about her business more efficiently. So augmented reality has a lot of qualities that I think make it a very powerful healing tool, not just because it's fun, but there's 3 other really important things for us here. First thing is that augmented reality is immersive, but not too immersive. And what I mean by that is that because it combines physical and digital worlds at the same time, it allows that child to stay grounded. And this is important for a couple of reasons. The first is essentially, in our application for therapy, they need to be in constant contact with that therapist. They need to see them, they need to hear them, they need to understand what that therapist is asking them to do so that they can cooperate. They need to maintain that connection. It's also about safety in many cases, so that they Sometimes it's about getting up and being able to walk around and not worrying about obstacles or bumping into something, tripping and falling. But it's also for a child, sometimes they're connected to monitoring devices. They have an IV in them. They might have tubes up their nose. And this might be not be a normal situation. So they're not going to remember they necessarily have these things. So sometimes they don't remember the restrictions on movement. So letting them maintain being grounded in reality is really important, that they can see these things at all times. And then, of course, the comfort level, being able to see mom and dad or whoever is there for you, have that constant human contact. This is a big part of healing in the hospital. So when you're using it with therapists for children, we need to maintain that contact. The other aspect is, of course, that touch. Now, you can touch anything, and obviously this can apply to virtual reality, but because we trigger off of simple things like cards and books and other comfort items. And so this is not only important for grounding, as I mentioned before, but there's a lot of application in terms of developing dexterity, accuracy, endurance, other types of motor skills necessary. So whether you're manipulating the virtual world or you're manipulating the physical objects that we add the virtual world to, there's benefits all around, which is why when we started with distraction therapy, occupational therapists started picking it up because getting kids to do the pinch movement to hold a really thin and maybe hard to hold card was something much better than getting them to, pick up this clothespin and put it on a line 37 times. No kid wants to do that. But they'll pick up our lion card, it's 37 times. And then the last piece is really about motivation and creating meaningful work, if you will, for kids to do to cooperate with their rehabilitation. So because augmented reality adds things to the real world, it's like adding properties to the real world that would, or abilities to the real world that might not otherwise be possible. And maybe for kids through their eyes might seem supernatural or superhero powers. And for a kid to be able to control that really has a lasting effect mentally for them to be able to power through frustrating or painful therapy that could last, for weeks on end. How do you keep a kid motivated to come back and do repetitive activities over and over again that, they don't see immediate results and doesn't feel good to them? For us, when we were coming into this space, trying to help kids in the hospital comply with their therapy, we really had to understand the workflow of these therapists and what it took to get kids to be well in this situation. Because we had a choice of different technology to use. And for us, the choice was very clearly augmented reality in this specific situation. For a therapist, they have to come in, they might frequently have to calm a child, they have to provide comfort. Then they have to build meaningful communication. They have to be able to work with the child. And ultimately, the goal is to create a trust relationship to say, I know this is scary and maybe you don't understand, but I just need you to do this with me to get you better. And that's the ideal situation. And for us, augmented reality was the obvious choice. Now, there's a lot of therapeutic benefits for virtual reality, so I'm not dissing anyone. Pain management, phobia treatment, PTSD, it goes on and on. But in this specific situation, for those reasons I listed before, augmented reality was the best choice for us. Now, I've spoken a lot about children. This isn't just for kids. The idea of serious play is not my idea. It's, Lego has coined this term. But the idea of giving also adults ability to play and create imaginative space, if you will, is really helpful in complex problem solving, team building, motivation, all kinds of things. This is important to us because if we are building items for play, for healing, we need to really imbue those items with a sense of playfulness. So as a culture, as a team, we need to make sure that we incorporate play every day. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, we played Dungeons and Dragons one afternoon, a little role playing, never hurt anybody. Of course, I'm going to bring home lots of goodies so we can play with virtual and augmented reality, but it's this idea of if you're building for play, to play yourself. And really, there are 3 elements to augmented reality that I think make it a magic healer. Combining reality and illusion, and then this concept of perception and how they influence each other when a child is engaging in an augmented reality experience. So what is there, what they know or believe to be there, what is not there, what we can trick them into thinking is there, and what they end up ultimately believing about that situation. And for us, it's about changing the stories that are told in hospitals, where a child who has cerebral palsy and has to be held down by a nurse to have injections in their leg as a regular part of their life. I mean, imagine for a child, imagine for that parent, and imagine for that nurse. Like, who signed up for this? This is archaic. So the idea of creating new tools and new ways to engage kids so that they can focus on positive aspects. And we can't get rid of the negative aspects of treatment. They're going to be there, but that's not the stories we need told. The hospitals are the place trying to get kids to be well. So I'm going to leave a final story with you. We'll call him Andy. He is 15 years old. He has a rare disease that's going to vastly shorten his life, and he lives in the hospital right now. He's lived in the hospital for years. We go to the hospital very frequently to engage with the therapist, but when we get permission to just watch patients, and we'll bring our toys with us. So he's wearing Oculus here. I don't have a photo of the day we went, but we went with a HoloLens. And we gave it to Andy, and we had made some stuff on it, and he was also like playing some other games that we had showed him. And he had gotten out of his bed, and he was like, he wasn't doing anything too crazy, but he was walking around his room and looking around and moving his arms and shooting things. And his physical therapist, who had been wrapping up the session beforehand, was standing there and just staring, and she turned to me and she said, "He hasn't gotten out of bed in a week." And his mom and his little brother were in the room, and it really struck me about the impact in terms of quality of life for a child and their family. This is, how boring is it to live in the hospital? You've got, and he was under infection control. He couldn't leave his room. So how boring, how awful is that? What is the quality of life for them? So bringing just even elements, therapeutic elements of exploring the ocean or seeing the stars at night above your bed. Like, the power of this to give him quality of life, but also to give his mom and his little brother opportunity to look at him and feel happy, like moments of joy and escape. So augmented reality is fun, and fun heals. And I think there's just so much opportunity moving forward with both augmented and virtual reality to understand the situation, know the workflow of the therapist, understand the struggles that kids are going through, and bring this technology to the hospitals. So if there's any time left, I can leave some time for questions. Yes?
Do you have any clinical results?
Our company, no. We primarily sell on what we call patient experience, not what we call, but what is patient experience return on relationship. We're about to start a couple studies. One is a quality improvement pain management study with Stanford University, and the other is a study that's really evaluating the effectiveness of augmented reality to engage people with complicated medical concepts and improve understanding. So there are two things we're doing to begin studying that, but we have no results yet. Thank you.
It's a wonderful cause. It was emotional watching some of these scenes. How is this funded? Is it through grants, or is it actually monetized by the hospitals purchasing?
Yeah, the question is, how has it been funded? A lot of sweat equity to date, but we went to market in November, and we've sold to a hospital a month. So the hospital pays essentially a subscription, unlocks the therapeutic content. We have a whole bunch of stuff. The therapists use it. It just works on the mobile devices that they already own, and that they already have sterilization protocols for. So this is a really important part for the therapists. And then for the parents can also download it and use it and take it home and continue to use it afterwards. So that kind of continuity aspect. So that's where we are right now in terms of where it's been funded.
Is there a lot of pushback from the therapists? Do they believe in what you're providing?
Yes, the question was about pushback from the therapists. We have had surprisingly very little pushback, and I say surprisingly because these therapists aren't very often the most tech-forward people. They really are focused on patient and human interaction. So we were worried about that. We always get screen time or whatever, but the therapists see it working, and we have all kinds of crazy stories about kids who laugh during catheterization or burn dressing changes. These are incredibly traumatic and painful procedures. So as soon as they see it, they understand. And for therapists, they actually want to stay ahead of the curve. A few years ago, they would say, have you ever played a game on an iPad? They never ask that question now. They want to stay ahead of them. And for us, that we provide that thing that most kids have never really gotten a chance to really engage with before. Yeah.
Last one.
Have you, just picking up on things, have you, the hospitals reported maybe a decrease in sort of drug use, therapeutic drug use?
Yes. So the question is about drug use. And actually, this relates to your previous question as well. This one isn't for sure. We've applied for a grant to study the impacts on reducing opioid drug use in pain management aspects. There's an awesome VR company called KindVR that did a study for sickle cell anemia patients and proved that they massively lowered the perception of pain. And these kids are on opioid drugs all the time. And this was a virtual reality application. So we are looking to launch one for augmented reality to see the differences and efficacy of that. But yeah, we anecdotally get a ton of stories. We need to turn those into quantifiable results, but thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.